does it take?
Okay.
Thank you.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, obviously, I am filling in tonight as our president and vice president is, they are not here tonight. And so if you notice Dr. Borf shaking a little bit, it's because he has a novice sitting here beside him. First of all, I would like for us to start off with reading our mission statement, which is our purpose. It's what we're all about. And I have asked Aaron Stevens to read that tonight.
Thank you. Richmond Schools, in partnership with the community, will help all children believe in themselves, respect others, and experience the joy of learning. Through effective teaching, children will first learn the basic skills, including thinking skills, using words, numbers, and ideas. In addition, children will be given the opportunity to learn more of what they want and need to know. Adults will model behavior that will teach children to resolve conflict successfully, take risks with new ideas, and understand that they can err without being judged.
Thank you, Aaron. Obviously, our mission is what directs our work as we make decisions and have discussions on behalf of our students for Richmond Community Schools. And our vision statement is certainly our desired outcome. And Dixie Robinson is going to read our vision for us this evening.
Our board vision: Richmond Community Schools will be a high-performing, well-respected public school system that will make the community proud. Excellent student achievement, graduation rate, and attendance will be our hallmarks.
Thank you. And as the meeting progresses this evening, we're going to be doing a little bit of work toward a mission statement and a vision statement that will hopefully carry us through our next few years. Right now, it is time for public commentary, and certainly we invite our public to share with us and to make comments and to do it in a respectful manner. And do we have anyone signed up tonight? No. We do not have anyone signed up. Well, we have two public commentaries. So if you decide that you wish to say something, please stay with us. And at the end of our meeting, we also invite you to come forth. And our next agenda item is snapshots of success. Dr. Borf?
For our snapshots of success tonight, we turn to Mrs. Wolpe, principal of the high school, to introduce a special group of students who worked during the summer to promote not just Richmond High School, but Richmond, Indiana.
Thank you. And thank you for allowing us to share some of our successes. I want to celebrate tonight the hard work and efforts of 9 outstanding Richmond High School students and 3 outstanding business teachers, Denise Selm, Linda Isom, and Terry Runnels. This summer, in partnership with the Indiana University East Center for Entrepreneurship, along with Tim Scales, worked on a program called Marketing Your Success to market Richmond, Indiana. The program was funded through Richmond Community Schools, and the students and the teachers would like to share with you tonight their adventure and accomplishments, and I will have them come forward right now. Please, the group. And I saw their presentation at IU East, and for those of you that were there, it was amazing what these teachers and students put together. And I also want to thank Tim Scales also for all of his assistance.
Alrighty. As Ms. Volpe said, we are some Richmond High School students. Not all of us are here this evening, unfortunately. But what we did was, over a course of 2 weeks over the summer, we went into the Innovation Center. Thank you. We went into the Innovation Center, and for 6 hours a day, we tried to find everything that was great about Richmond, and that is great about Richmond. And what we did was we went around town, we went to different businesses, we interviewed people, and we found all the small things that most people don't get to see, and we put them together into a program that we presented at the end of the 2 weeks, and that highlighted all the great things Richmond has to offer. Personally, for me, it was really a great experience to really see all the things that I never knew about Richmond. I mean, I've lived in Richmond my entire life, and through this program, my eyes were opened completely to many different things, and small and large things that I just never knew about. So initially in the program, we split up into 3 areas, and they were the technology, community, and industry. And so we had 3 groups of 3 kids, and each student split into a farther section of each one of those, and I focused on the career portion of industry. And so I looked at all the big business and why businesses should come to Richmond and things like that. So I'm going to now let everybody else introduce themselves and tell you what they worked on. Oh, I'm Mitchell A. House.
Hello, my name is Yasmin Lewis, and I'm a senior. During the Marketing Your Success program, I was a part of the community group, and I focused on younger children. And one thing I really appreciated through the program that I really found interesting is going through and seeing all the different things Richmond had, and opportunity-wise was really good, and that was really the most fun part, just going into the different areas of Richmond and just learning the different things.
Hi, I'm Erica Bischoff. I'm a junior at the high school, and I was in the industry group, and I focused on the food industry and retail here in Richmond. And I learned that we have a lot of diversity for a town our size, which is what makes us so great, is that no matter who you are and what you like, you can find anything here for whatever you enjoy.
Hi, I'm Josh McDonald. I'm a senior, and I focus mainly within the community, more within the retirement in community. And one of my favorite things I learned and did was seeing and learning a lot about the history of Richmond within the Depot District, the Gar House Mansion, and a lot of the historical places that are here in our city.
Hi, I'm Roisin Brombot. I'm a senior at Richmond High School. I focused on education and career in the community in Richmond. And my favorite part was by far working with Tim Scales and Miss Denise Salm and Terry Reynolds and Miss Linda Isom. They were extraordinary. They helped us with so much, especially Tim Scales, letting us get out in Richmond and having a lot of connections that we got to see in Richmond, and it was awesome working with them. Go ahead.
The CDs that I gave most of you, I know some of you are at our presentation, forgot the word today. So just on there, it has the lyrics of the words. It was sung by Emily Jetmore. Unfortunately, she was not able to make it today. But it's a very good song that just talks about the different aspects of Richmond through community, technology, and industry for all different ages. Are there any questions?
Aaron?
What was the most surprising thing that you learned about Richmond, the history of it, or anything else? I mean, there are so many things that Richmond has to offer that if people would just get out of their houses and go visit, they're there. And I'm one of the first ones to say, for all those naysayers who say there's nothing to do in Richmond, you probably found out that there are a lot of things in Richmond. So what are the most surprising things that you have found out?
One thing that I found most surprising is when we visited Belden. Before Belden, I really didn't understand what it was, but Belden is not just a factory that does piping and all the electrical cords. It's a family there. When the people were telling their stories about people giving money to support their families and people living across the street for like their whole lives to work there, it just seems really amazing that a factory like that can do so much to the community and support the community and have actually create a family with their workers. And that's one thing I really found surprising with Richmond. I never really knew that.
Are you sharing your project with any other organizations?
One thing that we really focused on is marketing your success is networking. So one thing we did, we came up with ideas and different brainstorming ideas to market Richmond. That way other people in the community who wanted to go start something else, they could kind of see the ideas that we came up with, and they could work with someone else and kind of use their networking skills to make something big. So that's one of the main things we focused on.
Great. Suzanne?
I know you guys had just a couple of weeks, but you came up with a couple of products. Do you have plans for them? I know you said networking, but are we going to make some effort to have some of these things move forward?
See, that was the one thing that we did. We wanted to come up with ideas just to kind of give a head start for someone else who wanted to give
Who would
that.
that be?
Anyone in the community, someone, maybe it's someone who wants to come into the city and start their own business.
Okay.
And then maybe some, from our tourism bureau.
Okay.
Like
so you
one
work
reason,
with-
like they could take the ideas that we have to bring in
Okay.
other people from there. And our airport, like they have, they can take some more ideas to bring people in there and make it like a bigger airport or have more tourism come in like that
Right.
way.
Anyone else? Well, thank you very much. Job well done.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate that.
And the instructors.
Yeah, we had a video we're going to share with you real quick. The Channel 7 came and talked with Tim Scales and a couple of the students about their experiences. So we're going to share that with you right now.
It's the middle of their summer vacation, but some high school students are in the classroom.
9 students learned how to sell themselves to colleges and potential employers. They also studied ways to market their community.
News Center 7's Mark Bruce takes us to Richmond.
Those 9 students just finished up the Marketing Your Success program here in Uptown Richmond. They tell me they learned a lot about themselves, but they learned more about the community they call home.
As much as I've gone around Richmond, just driving around aimlessly being a teenager, I had no idea about all of the cool things that you could really do in Richmond.
I didn't know that we had a lot of the smaller shops here. I mean, I knew we had a lot of locally owned businesses, but I guess I just didn't realize how many.
Erica Bishnoff and Roshni Brownbot have a new appreciation for Uptown Richmond and what it has to offer.
It was pretty cool to go up there.
As part of the Marketing Your Success program, educators through IUE's Center for Entrepreneurship taught these Richmond High students all about marketing, how to sell themselves and their community.
I really wanted to find out what the youth of Richmond would be thinking about Richmond. They're the ones who grow up here. They're the ones who are here every day. And
Director
so
Tim
I had a
Scales
meeting with
says he
Dr.
was
Bork
blown
this
away by the
saying,
students.
let's do
They
it.
learned new things about Richmond, then came up with ideas to tell the region all about it. One idea is to hold a community-wide open house. Another is to create an app all about Richmond and Wayne County.
What's going on in Richmond, what's to see in Richmond, what the schedule is in Richmond, or any community as far as that goes. But that's a new way of generating new marketing, new advertising and promoting.
The students are working with local tourism officials to make both happen, and these girls tell me they want to see it through to help their more appreciated hometown grow.
We have to market to the people here first, and they get out there.
Scales says some of the students' work with Wayne County tourism officials could become a reality sometime within the next year. In Richmond, I'm Mark Bruce, News Center 7.
Meanwhile, other Richmond...
To answer your question, Suzanne, I know in the classroom, the experiences that we had with the connections that we made with local businesses, it gave us a lot of ideas in regards to having field trips, having speakers come in and share. There were some businesses that we, especially when I was in the technology group, that aspect of our community is really thriving. And they're small businesses, and a lot of people in the community aren't aware of what's going on. So now we have those connections.
App is a great idea. So I would like to see it passed on to someone who will
Absolutely.
make it actually.
Yes, and now we have the contacts in the community that can help us with that portion.
Yes, Mr.
I
Cross.
thought you were going to kind of lead into it, but I would really like to see this group consider making its work product available to the Economic Development
Absolutely.
Commission, because while tourism is great, and we want to encourage it, what you guys have done here is create a product that I think has a very significant amount of influence to a prospective business looking to relocate here, because nothing speaks better about our youth than the youth themselves, and I think you guys did a pretty nice job.
I agree.
Thank you. I would like to thank Tim Scales also. And while the students are here, I'm not sure if he gave some background, but one of the challenges that I think students, I don't care if it's Richmond or Wayne County or Indiana or the U.S., one of the problems that students have is that they're often viewed as something to be taken care of. Students are to be schooled. Students are to be kept in school. What do we do with the kids? And many times society in general looks at students as maybe not a burden, but a responsibility. One of the things that we wanted to do was to prove, at least to this community, that our students are an asset and that students are capable of doing some great things for the people who consider themselves responsible for those students. And I think, just as Mr. Cross pointed out, you've come through in a way that demonstrates young people have a lot to offer and can change not just their community, but they can change the way youth are viewed in their community. Mr. Scales, thank you, and maybe you have some more thoughts on the experience that they had.
Actually, I do, but I'm not going to take a lot of your time. What I'm going to share with you is that in the 7 years that I've been at the university, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of students. And each day as I work with those students, I'm jealous, okay? Because we have good students that are coming to the university from other places, whether it be Indianapolis, Terre Haute, wherever it may be. Those students continue to work with me and they develop, and then they go back, okay? So I'm jealous for those communities to get those talents. But then I just get excited the last few weeks after working with this group of students, because I realize after they graduate from Richmond High School, they may go away to colleges. But I also know that those colleges that are developing them are going to lose them to come back to Richmond. So I think we should be very excited about this young group of students that are going to come back here in a few years. So I know their talents, I know their abilities, they're very strong. I'm not going to let them go. I'll mentor them for the next 6 years just to make sure we get them back.
Very good.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to move on to reports and discussion topics.
Our first report has to do with our enrollment, or what we call ADM, Average Daily Membership, and the financial implications. If you'd bring up the chart that we have. I'd like to show you, and if we could have the lights dimmed again, it might be a little clearer. For the last several years, we have been putting our enrollment into Power School. Now, what you see would be 2007 to this year in line graph form, and the numbers that you see up there, for example, let's take 2007, the very top one. We start with 5,352. This is a total student count. When we look at our average daily membership, that's an official count recognized by the state, and in this official count, we only have kindergartners allowed to be represented by a 0.5. So our average daily membership number we'll talk about in a minute, but what I'm showing you up here are total students, and in 2007-8, 5,352. The second number up there, 5,432, represents the official student count on that ADM day. ADM day falls in September every year. The third number, 5,428, would be a number in February, and that represents what will now become, as of this coming February, an official count day. We have one in the fall, now we're going to have one in the spring. So we've taken the February 15th count back in 2008, and then that final number up there, 5,432, represents the end of the year count. So each of those lines represents what happened with student enrollment from day one to the very last day, and including what would be two very important count days, ADM and then a second ADM now. So in 2007-8, we had a rather steady number. Now, I think it's kind of interesting. We've gone back. We have tried to remember what happened in that year because it was a stable year. But you know, we thought about something at the end of the day, and that was before our economic downturn across the country. I think that's kind of an interesting thing. In the fall of 2008, we began, the whole country went through a significant financial recession. We really don't know of anything else that happened within the system that year that would cause that to be stable, and the other lines look fairly similar. In 2008-9, we started with 5,328 students. ADM day was up just a bit, which is not uncommon. From August to September, we generally do bring in students. People are not finished moving around. People are still on vacations. So after Labor Day, we tend to see that number go up a bit. Between the ADM count and then that February count, our enrollment declined to 5,204 from 5,057. That was a significant loss of students. In fact, it was a 153 loss, most significant loss that we've seen at any point within that year or within all the years we've had. If you look, there's only one year, 2009-10, where we actually lost students between the first day and our ADM count. If you remember, 2009-10 was when we implemented a new dress code.
Oh, yeah.
And we did have a loss to ADM day, but it did rebound to that February date and then again declined. Some of the decline between the ADM count and the end of the year has to do with mid-year graduates, students who have an opportunity to leave early. That's a part of that decline. So it's going to happen every year. But what we've done, down at the bottom, you see a broken line. For this year, 2012-13, we started the year with 4,921. Our ADM went up to 4,970. And what we've done by taking averages is to show if everything holds true, if the average of the previous 5 years is a valid indicator, then our ADM in February will be right around 4,910 with a decline of 58 to the end of the year, which would be 4,852. Now, what we're challenged to do is to see if some of the new pieces to the master plan will generate interest and slow down some of that loss or even attract students back. We'll be watching those projections very closely to see if we're wrong one way or the other. We're hoping that we're wrong and that those numbers or that line will actually be a lot less steep. Maybe it'll be straight. But there are financial implications here. And what I wanted to do was spend a little bit of time tonight talking with Mr. Coddington and board members to show you what some implications are and possible scenarios, because it is a financial loss that we're looking at in terms of state revenue. Mr. Coddington.
From last September's count, we're down an ADM, and remember kindergartners are counted as a half in the revenue line, 132 students. At $6,271 a student starting in January, we will be receiving on a run rate of $952,512 less. Now, should our February count come in at 60 lower, that would be a reduction for next year from July 1st to December of $188,130. So we look at our revenue line for ADM next year and to be forecasted at $1,140,642 less than we got in 2012.
Could you say that number again?
$1,140,642. Now, the 952,000, these aren't my numbers on estimates. I've plugged them into the 11-page formula for the state, and this is what the state has given me. Now, the last 6 months is my estimate because we don't have a grant to put, we don't have a formula to put them in. They'll do that. So we've got some work to do, but I concur with Dr. Boroff. We have put a master strategic plan together that says this is going to make a difference in Richmond Community Schools. And I think we need to stay the course with some objectives, goals to meet, to be evaluating, and to see where we end up. I think we've had in some respects, a rocky start to school, but we've had a good start to school. You know, the book, Who Moved My Cheese? A lot of people got their cheese moved this year. Yeah. And we're teaching. We're back on education. So the rough start is over.
Well, I was hoping we could talk about some scenarios to how we might meet this. One of the scenarios that the board will have to consider and that we'll be looking at working with you through would be simply to make all those necessary cost reductions to achieve $1 million revenue loss, or to balance the budget given $1 million revenue loss. We can do that. We've done that with the master planning for this year. We've actually eliminated $1.8 million of expenses. We could do that next year, and we could identify where those reductions would have to fall. But we also want the board to remember that we have a rainy day fund that has been set aside for a rainy day. We may be there. And that also is an option to be considered. Now, why would we even bring that in? Because in years past, we have not viewed the rainy day fund as anything to be used to help balance a budget. Given the changes that we've made in our master plan reorganization of the district, it might be a wise thing for us to see how much we could support that plan so that it at least has a cycle and can lure people back by quality programming and quality educational conditions. As Mr. Coddington talked about, there are ways of examining the results as we move through to determine whether we need to revise some of that support, eliminate some of that support, go through the cost reductions. But one of the pages of information that I asked him to prepare would be 3 scenarios where we look at using the rainy day fund totally to support these reductions so that we would not have to make any cuts, at least for a year. And then there are also some thoughts based on attracting students back. And you remember that every student is a $6,200 revenue source. So if you attract a number of students back, you increase your potential to avoid any cuts and avoid incurring any kinds of expenses to the rainy day fund. But there are also then combinations of budget reductions and uses of the rainy day that we could also work with to achieve a minimal impact on what we've put in place to attract students and their families back to the Richmond Community Schools. So tonight is just the beginning of that conversation. I'm asking for no decisions tonight, but for the next few months we'll be talking about that so that by this time, I shouldn't say by this time next year, but by probably January, we're looking at a recommendation to go forward. When we come to February this year, we'll also know just how much our projections are valid that you're looking at tonight, and how much more will have to be reduced, or how much more we can count on for additional revenue. Do you have any questions about the scenarios that I've asked Mr. Coddington to?
Is there a way that we could, I know we know how many kids have withdrawn and we know where they go. Is there any way we could get a percentage on how many of those have withdrawn for other options or have withdrawn because they've moved from the state?
Yes, we do have that information. We do have that information. I've given you information on how many went to certain schools, but we also have information on how many just left. You were given some information. How many was it? 485 students withdrew from the Richmond Community Schools. We lost 132, meaning all in between are students who transferred into the Richmond Community Schools.
Is there any way to get, can you go back and kind of get a trend, an average for, especially economically, why they would be leaving?
In some cases, they have shared with us where they've gone. In many cases, we don't know why they went. But if they've gone out of state with their families, we're assuming that would have been an economic decision. They've relocated.
Because, I mean, that's something you have no control over. So.
We have assembled a lot of information through Power School, but we've also done a lot of phone calling. The principals have called many of these students and their families to find out exactly what prompted them to make a decision to leave. Those students who were and families who were still here. So we can share with you the information that we've been able to put together.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because if you had that average until things bottom, at least you could be kind of projecting that percentage or number. No, for loss.
Well, it's interesting because most of our loss happened in the elementaries. The high school, for the most part, held its own in enrollment. The intermediate schools pretty much had the enrollment that we were projecting. The elementaries is where we saw the drop-off, and it's not that I'm totally baffled. We were told that there were some people who were just unhappy with that, and they decided to move elsewhere. But
it could be younger families.
Could have been. But we must not have been able to convince a number of them that the pre-K4 arrangement stands only to benefit their children. Pre-K4 grade configuration is viewed as one of the premier configurations for the primary years. And we're convinced, given just some of the first responses we've heard from teachers and principals, that we have a good product there. And it's too bad that some people, students especially, couldn't have experienced that. But we're also confident that as they hear the good information that we're sure that's out there, there will be some reconsideration.
So as parents were contacted, we didn't find out the reason that they decided to leave.
Many of them did tell us the reasons that they were planning to leave. You weren't given all that information because it's not necessarily in Power School, but it's on lists that the principals have put together that wasn't necessarily a part of our database. Our principals, particularly in Garrison, Fairview, I don't remember how many of the schools, we know that they contact almost every single, they were able to contact every single family. So we do have some good feedback. And many of them were just frustrated.
Well, I'm pleased that we're going to be talking about this in the upcoming weeks, because I want to, I guess, right now I'm thinking, yes, it's important to try to keep as many programs as we possibly can, and of course programs mean staff, but yet we also want to be prepared for the future also, and for some years down the road. And so I want to ensure that we are doing that also. When I took my seat on this board, my predecessors had ensured that we were fiscally sound. And I certainly want to ensure that whenever I leave this board that I have done the same. And I think that's also in the best interest of our students now and our students in the future. So I'm pleased that we're going to be having conversations concerning this. Anybody? Aaron?
And going back to what Dr. Borf had said in regards to the pre-K through 4, that configuration, even at the ISBA Fall Conference, in some corporations, in finding out that we had gone to this type of configuration, were rather envious because it took us to reach a cliff, in essence, to make this master plan effort to work. And I know that it upset some people because it created an educational environment that was not the norm and was not the norm over the last 40 or 50 years. But with boards from around the state who, upon finding out that we had gone to this configuration, were rather envious. I think our responsibility is going to be, as we look at the short term and also the long term, is to make that the most marketable effort that we can in this side of the state of Indiana, because everyone else says that this is the perfect setup for families. With that type of configuration, it goes against what has been the norm. It offers concentrated effort for every student, whether they be in preschool or whether all the way up through the 4th, because the effort is intense and intentional with them. And the gains that we're looking at to recoup some of those families or those students that we have lost may not yet be there for another 2 or 3 years down the road. And my discussion is going to be to make sure that we make this the most magnanimous and most glowing opportunity for families, so that they say, okay, we've got to get there, we've got to be a part of it, because I know that not only will my son or daughter be reading grade level by the age of 3 or even before then, but by the time that they go to the intermediate school or prepare for 5th or 6th grade, they're going to be well above, their peers in any other corporation.
Jeff?
Actually, a couple things. And I guess part of this is just to make sure that I'm correct in my thinking. Right now, your projected cash flow deficit at the end of 2013, based on the revised student revenue, is $780,000. And that's actually been straight line for 2014 as well. And we're about ready to roll over the end of the year, so we can even start talking about 2015. The second ADM count that we're going to have in February of 2013, and the way I understand it from a state level, really isn't going to affect, the intent of it, we've been told, is not going to affect our funding for the next calendar year. I mean, that's kind of the understanding I have.
What I understand, it will affect the second half of calendar year 13.
Okay, because I think they were talking 2014. But regardless of that, I guess that there's some things that we also have to keep in mind, that it's difficult for us to make changes through the school year. So, we're talking about a plan and a recommendation to move forward within the next 4 weeks or 6 weeks. I guess I would also argue that we have a little bit longer than to do that, because our biggest opportunity to make changes is at the end of the school year before the new school year starts. The bad thing about that is, if you're basing your savings on a school year, you're only going to realize half of that savings for the end of that fiscal year, because you're only talking about the fall. So I guess, one, I would kind of caution about nailing all of our solutions within the next 4 to 6 weeks. The other thing that goes along with that is, back when I was on the board the first term, my first term, back in a long time ago, we created a finance committee that had 3 board members on it, the director of finance and I believe the superintendent, as we were going through some of those financial issues. Maybe this would be an appropriate time to have a finance committee created again and meet bi-weekly or monthly, at least for the next 6 months as we go through this, because if you're going to be coming to us with recommendations to maintain programs or cut programs, then I think we may need to be better informed. I'm not trying to insinuate you don't inform us, but when we start diving into a $35 million budget, we're going to start talking, a $25,000 savings could be huge. So from my perspective, I guess I would like to put the recommendation on the table that we go ahead and create a finance committee that has 3 members of the board on it. And I would like to volunteer to be one of those 3. Now, that's the consensus of the board, but I don't care about that. But I think the more conversation we have about this moving forward, I think it's going to be easier for us as a board to collectively make those decisions. So I can understand not wanting to cut programs now, but if we've lost 100, what's our count's 134, 132? And we have, an average staff of a 20-to-1 ratio, or 22-to-1, that's 7 positions, or 6 positions if it was all perfect in the world. I realize 1 here, 1 there, you can't do that. But with that information, and we still have if we factor in that we still have a projected growth for the following September, then we're going to have to make some pretty drastic changes in the summer of next year for the following year. So is anything that I said other than maybe the February 80 account not, is that
No,
pretty accurate?
I think those are accurate comments, and the scenarios that we talked about use the rainy day fund to alleviate some of those changes and cuts, but it does not eliminate the necessity of making some cuts.
Because we have a lot of other things that's going to hit the table in fiscal year 2013 that we're going to have to discuss, and it all goes with finances. I mean, one of them, there's some talk about we're wanting to do a one-on-one initiative with either laptops or netbooks or iPads, or there's a cost associated with that. There's, there's talks about we're wanting to look at maybe putting together a plan to do some renovation at the high school, and there's a cost associated with that. So, I mean, it's really a good opportunity, or a good time for us to talk about transportation, capital projects, rainy day fund, general fund. I mean, it's a good time to go through and talk about all of those. And if we could put it in a format that we could communicate out to the board regularly, then it'll make it easier for all of us.
A big picture, you're talking
Right.
about looking at the big picture.
Yeah, we need to,
for,
instead of just talking one thing, let's talk about, okay, if we do the one-to-one initiative, if we do the, just get a good grasp, because it's kind of hard to sit here and make a decision based on how we want to allocate the rainy day fund if we've not talked about the renovation, or if we've not talked about the technology, or so it just kind of all needs to be together, not in silos. I guess that's my point.
Suzanne?
I was hoping that we also might have collected from the information that we're gathering from both those students who have, families who have left and those who have stayed, the pieces that are important to them, maybe the why they left, because I think that we have products to address most of those, and I would like to be able to pass that along to the communication group so that maybe we can impact that February date. So, I mean, I know you've been collecting it. I'm hopeful that there's some information there that we can take advantage of. Yes?
I think so.
Okay.
I would like, well, we're talking about finances, and Aaron Stevens brought up the recent conference. The board attended the Indiana School Boards Association Fall Conference. At one of the tables, in one of the sessions that I attended, the board members from Goshen asked me how we have been able to put preschool classrooms in all of our buildings, because they're trying. They are trying, and I think that they've developed capacity for 60, and I told them what our capacity was. They were astounded, and they asked how we paid for that. I think it's important for the community to know what my answer was. My answer was, we have a very philanthropic staff.
Absolutely.
And the reason I said that was, the reason some school boards cannot afford to put preschool in their schools is that cost comes out of the same pot of money that you use to pay your staff, your teachers, your administrators, your custodians, parapros. You have to realize that we have had an all-day kindergarten commitment in this district since before I came. That's only been funded at 50%, which means the other 50% has been paid for out of our general fund with money that could have gone to pay raises to the staff or to provide more staff members. The preschool is the same situation. We've done the preschool. We have put preschool in all elementaries except Charles, and that's simply because of space. And that money has been money that could have gone for staff raises or for additional staff. So that's why I said, one of the Goshen school board members said, you're kidding. And then no, you're not kidding. And I said, no, we have staff that could have otherwise financially, individually benefited from a decision not to do that kind of programming, and we've done that. Now, I commend this board and past boards for making that commitment, but I think we also need to thank our staff for coming in day after day after day, knowing that we're building a better system, and it's an investment in their future, but in the short run, it means that they don't have some of the raises they might have otherwise had. And that's administrators, teachers, and so on. So I just think it's important to say that. Let it be known. We'll be coming back, and Jeff, I think your idea of a committee is a fine recommendation, whether that's a board appointed or a committee brought together by our finance director. Regardless, it's a great idea, and it will be very important this year to have one.
Good.
Wait a minute. That's on record. I had a good idea.
Once in a while.
Don't get caught.
Maybe the second one. Okay, thank you.
The Race to the Top grant, we discussed, maybe it was brought time before last, but we are in the midst of an application process. We had hoped that we might have an outline of the grant. Well, that's not going to be possible. We're still in the midst of putting all that together. But Misty Hollis, who is our point person on this, would like to prep you on where we are in the process and just talk about what we're hoping to see happen in the next couple days.
Thank you, Dr. Worf. Just to bring you up to speed, at our last meeting we introduced the concept of us applying for Race to the Top. By then we had a letter of intent submitted for that, and we weren't quite sure how many applicants were going to be out there, and at this point we know just in our category it's 433 is our competition level. So we do know it's very competitive, but again, we still feel confident. It is a tremendous amount of work. We're grateful to have Karen Kimball, who has been offered to assist us through this process, and so we're excited that she's at the table. What we have done since our last time together is internally have our discussions of where we want our focus to be. A lot of research has been done too on what the expectations might be for the grant application, and then in addition to that, we've held stakeholder meetings with educators and with some community partners. And so we will be introducing to Mark Millis and Dr. Borf tomorrow themes that have come out of those stakeholder meetings, and then we will receive kind of a more focus of where we need to direct our time, and then the whole grant process the writing of it will begin right after that. So I would assume this weekend is when that's going to begin. So that's where we are, and we're still moving forward.
You said there were 400 some applicants.
433 in our category,
In our
892 total.
Do you know how many are in the state of Indiana?
For our area,
Looks
it's
like about 15.
15.
Mhm.
Okay.
We have a good shot.
Those are better numbers.
15. I'm like,
Yep,
And that there's nothing to say that any school in Indiana will be granted one.
that's true. That's true.
Dixie?
Well, and not at this meeting, but at some point, grants like this, I mean, you're competing against so many people, and there's a lot of time and effort that has to be put in those grants, writing them. So at some point, I would like for them to speak to, even if we don't get it, the benefits that come from preparing it, because there are benefits.
There are. There will be.
I was excited yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, the stakeholder meetings that we had. We had two sessions. We had a morning session and afternoon session with two different groups of people. And I did not show the second group of people what the first group came up with. I let that alone and let them be fresh. And when they were finished, when the second group was finished, I said, can we see what the morning session came up with? And it almost mirrored each other. And a lot of those things, surprisingly enough, Dixie, we probably can do without significant dollars. And it's just really talks about the way we work together, our culture, and how we're moving our focus a united focus. And so it was exciting to see, and they were excited to see that in the afternoon, or in the evening last night when it was all finished, that they mirrored what was in the morning. So I absolutely believe that we need to, just as we did with Safe Schools, Healthy Students, that was a plan. And I think what we come up with, we need to look toward and work toward, be critical to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next report we have is one concerning student medical needs. And we have Mrs. Bergdahl, who is our Director of Exceptional Education, and what that title means is that she also works with our health professionals, our nurses, and she would like to share with you some information on some of the student health needs that we've observed as of this year.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Boroff. At the last board meeting, Linda did express the concern that she'd heard that there were some needs to address in our clinic areas. So in your last board update, for this last week, I did send you some information that our nurses were able to compile some numbers at each of their buildings, and so I listed all of those different health issues. What we're seeing this year, because as we sat down last spring and kind of assigned the nurses to the buildings, we felt we were in a pretty good shape. The 3 nurses who traveled were each assigned to an intermediate building, and along with 2 elementaries. And we felt that was pretty good, that they would probably be able to visit the intermediate buildings probably every morning, or maybe every afternoon, however they were assigned, and then spend more time in our elementaries. And then our 2 nurses that are over at the high school would be there full time. So as we began the school year, we started, we were busy in the clinics, and then all of a sudden we were having students especially increase that had been identified as being diabetic. So that's the number one thing that we're seeing right now, the increase, and that's our type 1 students that are diabetic, who has to have insulin or carb checked, and also snacks and different things throughout the day. So Dr. Boroff asked me to look at the number of diabetic students we had last year in the district, and we had 8. And this year we have 22.
Oh my
goodness.
Now, we really don't know what the rise or what the increase of that might be. I called Riley, I called our pediatric center, even called Reed's Diabetic and Education Center, just to ask them if they have any reason for the increase. They did not. Now, type 2 is on increase because type 2 is more connected with obesity and diet and lack of exercise. But what we're really seeing here, the 22 that we have identified, are really the type 1 insulin users. So I also, under the diabetes, it talks about is the most common chronic disease in children and adolescents, with 151,000 people that are below the age of 20. So the juvenile diabetes is really kind of picked up. We have kindergartners all through the high school. Last year, the high school only had 3 students, and this year they have 12. So, that was our concern.
And could you explain why that's a problem with the nurses, with their workload?
Yes, okay. So our students who have health issues, and you can kind of go from one building to another, whether it's lunch or after recess or whatever. But our students that are diabetic pretty much have to have something about the same schedule. They either have to have something, their blood sugar checked in the mornings, either before they eat breakfast or after, and then have to have their insulin. They might have to have a snack, maybe around 10 o'clock. They have to have that checked again for carbs. Then they also have to be checked at lunchtime, and some of our intermediate buildings have 3 or 4 different lunch periods, so there may be, that time. Then they might have to be checked in the afternoon, and some of our students actually in the elementaries are being checked before they get on the bus. So that time period, I said to Dr. Boroff, I couldn't just designate one of my nurses to be the nurse for our diabetics, because they all have to have the same thing at the same time at the different buildings. So that's where we're kind of spread out. The other issue is I will say our staff in the office have always been wonderful. When the nurses haven't been at the buildings full time, they've always pitched in. Our secretaries, our clericals, and but when it becomes an issue with a diabetic student, I think there is a little hesitation there. They want somebody who is trained and make sure, especially when you draw up insulin.
That's a little different than
it has to be accurate. With our children in the elementary, most of them are not self-sufficient like our students maybe at the high school. After the age, sometimes between 8 and the age of 10, students can be put on the pump. And so some of our students over at the high school who have been identified for a long period of time are using the pump. But we're seeing students over the summer that were identified early, like in July, and then they started school in August. So they're not self-sufficient. They're not able to do the formula with the carbs, figure that out, and then how much insulin should I take. So there is a formula there. The other issue that we're seeing is increase in medications, and the number of students who have been receiving medications is about 4 to 6% of our school-age children. For some reason this year we seem to have an increase of students going from a pill form of medication to liquid. So that's another issue. It takes a little bit longer to administer, to draw that liquid medication and make sure it's the right dosage. We do have around 340 students this year identified with asthma. And that's not really an increase, but it's still a high number of our students that have inhalers or have to come in and have some kind of treatment. The average number of our students seen in the clinic on a daily basis, and we're not in the flu season yet, So around 18 daily in the elementary, sometimes between 40 and 60 in the intermediate level, and around 85 to 90 at the high school level. So on an average week, the high school is seeing about 1,000 students. So it's kind of there. In the intermediate level, we are seeing, our 5th and 6th graders are new in the building, so they're coming down to the clinic a lot, whether it's, whatever the need they might have. So that's been a little different for the office, the secretaries, and the clericals. The other information that you had in your packet was that the other health factors that were on that list, they may not be seen in the clinic every day, but the nurses and the teachers and the principals are aware of those health issues because most of those students have a Section 504 plan. It's under the law that must be served within if any of their medical needs have to be dealt with during school day, we need to know about it. So the asthma or heart conditions or students that might be experiencing maybe children that have cancer, any kind of treatments there might affect attendance, whatever, all those are put in a plan. So I just want you to know we are really trying to address these issues. The increase in the load, what our nurses are trying to do is instead of staying at a building, maybe 2 buildings on one day, they're really trying to travel to all 3 if they can. If not, we're using Mr. Roth, that is our LPN over at the high school. He's traveling to test most of the days to try to take care of those 3 diabetics that are at test. Then we're also using one of our other nurses that doesn't have any diabetics on her load, and she's trying to help cover another building. We've also had a nurse that's been out, so then that adds a little bit more to our issue of making sure that we're covering those needs every day. And I will say that the school staff has really helped step up to that and has helped us. The other part is, our students, a lot of our students, we've talked about this before, Misty's stressed it before, a lot of our students do not have access to health care, and that's been a concern for a long time. It seems that many of our children or our families do not have their own physician, so the only time that there needs to be any medical needs, they has to be done through emergency areas, where they can go to a clinic or something. Relying on emergency care is just, it's responsive to, okay, now my child is sick, now I have to find some way to help them and assist them. So a lot of times they go for a long period of times and not seeing a doctor. Or, I explained to the cabinet today, they will divide medicine up, and maybe it's already expired. They're trying to keep it back, so if a child gets sick again, they don't have to go out and purchase. So, when we see families they're in need of taking care of their own children, health needs, it is a concern. I am working with Dr. Boroff and Elisa on a plan so that we can address these health issues and try to come up with a plan that will be workable.
Well, in fact, I'd like to pick it up at that point and say one of the models that we're looking at would be to get some assistance for our nurses. And we're looking at a minimum of 2 qualified CNAs. Mm-hmm. And we're looking to see in this modeling that we're doing if that would be sufficient to at least slow down their mobility between the buildings on a day so that they can be of more assistance to the staffs and to the students there in those buildings. It's almost like they're on the run all the time, to the point that they're not making all the points of contact that they would prefer to be doing and that we would prefer that they make. So in our employment report, the next meeting, I'll direct your attention to the fact that we're probably going to be hiring at least 2 CNAs to meet the safety and health needs of our kids. We can't, I know I just talked to you about falling enrollment and revenue loss, but safety and health and safety is bottom line. That's absolutely essential. So we'll be recommending some
Priority.
So we
additional
have
staff.
5 nurses now,
We do.
and we have 9 buildings.
We have 6 nurses. We actually have an LPN that's assigned full-time to Crestdale for our primary life skills.
Right.
So she stays permanent
So
there.
does she by herself then handle, I didn't print off that, does she handle Crestdale completely by herself then?
We have a nurse that visits there two days a week.
Well, I guess I don't understand the different certification levels,
Okay.
and that's fine. I don't need to understand that. But you know, I guess I want to broach a subject because a year or so ago that we were talking about whether we should have a health care center or not. I guess in these particular instances, a health center wouldn't do us any good because we're talking about treatments and checking students throughout the day. I mean, the long illnesses and the recurring illnesses, and by all means, getting the medication and seeing medical care, and that's a whole separate issue. So, if we're
Well-
seeing these number of students every day for their illnesses,
Well, I'd like to go back to that point. The health care center, the singular health care center, I agree, would not be sufficient to do what we need it to do, what we need to do today. The partnership that we were talking about between Reed Hospital and Richmond Community Schools was a great model, and maybe we would like to talk about expanding that, not just in one center, but throughout the system.
so you're talking about health centers in each of the buildings?
Right. Probably not a center that, like we were
that
talking about in
level.
the grant. It wouldn't be a full-blown revamped and reorganized, renovated center, but we'd be using what we have. But we would be staffing it sufficiently to meet the needs of our students, because what we're finding is that, yeah, the students have their health needs, but it's the families that are not able to provide to meet those health needs. We have students who go years without adequate health care or even a contact with a doctor. I can give you, examples of
Oh, I believe you. Yeah, I believe you.
where we've seen that. And so what we envisioned in the health clinic that we talked about last year was that would be one way to counsel families of those students that we're seeing to move towards appropriate health care choices. And our nurses don't have the time to counsel families. They are so busy treating the students. And it could be that maybe we're talking to the county health clinic or to the Reed Hospital to join us so that we have some more wherewithal to meet the needs of the families.
One of the
Close to
questions,
families.
as you were talking about possibly adding the personnel, and that's why I don't understand the certification levels and the needs that we need to have with that. But I guess, is there some way that we could form a hybrid, because we've already discussed the fact that some principals in the buildings are overwhelmed with, whether we want them to spend 50 or 60 or 70% of the time in their classrooms. So, some have clerical, some have secretary. I think they all have a clerical and a secretary. And so I guess as we take a look at what this next year is going to look like for supporting our staff with their professional development and their growth and their evaluation and their RISE model, I mean, is it possible to have some kind of a hybrid? I mean, talk about changing.
That's what we're going to be offering.
Then, and get to the point that we have one that handles multiple tasks so they can stay in that building all day.
I think what we would love to see would be that every building has its own resource to provide for the needs of those students.
And what would be is CNA the minimum level certification that we would require for that?
Yeah, we couldn't go below that.
Like I said, I have no
In
clue
some
what they
cases,
are.
that wouldn't be good
Medication.
enough.
CNA wouldn't be good enough.
Well, I want to thank you for that extensive report. I think that was valuable information. But I also wanted to ask if, so are we working with our families to try to get them the appropriate health care. Because I understand that the nurses don't have time to do that, but couldn't that be one of the responsibilities of our CIS people, to work with our families in that respect? Because it seems to me that, first of all, it's something that really should not and cannot wait. And secondly, it seems as though that perhaps if we take care of some of these health needs that our students have on a daily basis, then that would help our nurses, free up our nurses for other more extensive issues that they must deal with. So I guess I don't want to wait until next year for this conversation. I think it needs to be happening right now, especially if the facilities are available in our city to take care of many of these health needs, then we would be remiss if we did not help our families to lead them to those places.
Our nurses are very diligent of trying to contact, and making, either helping the families seek medical care, give them access. Sometimes they're just not able to get in to the health clinic for appointments, or they don't have transportation to get there. There's a lot of family issues within a family who has a child that's ill, but I think they work very diligently, and I know the principals do, and our CIS people. We had a student that actually had graduated and got in contact with one of our nurses, and she worked with CIS to see if we could get him some help. So I do think that they work really hard to try to educate the families, try to give them ideas of how they can get medication, how they can get some funding, make sure that they're on keep current with the medication. That's one thing, because if a family brings in a bottle of medication that has expired, our nurses cannot give that. And I know the families are thinking that if they save it till the next time, that will help my child. But when it comes into the school, we can't give it. So they do work with the CIS people.
Are athletes the only ones required to get physicals? I mean, I know they have to have their shot records, but do students, are they required physicals any place along the way?
For the
physicals.
For a physical?
All the physicals. Yeah.
I don't know that we have a policy that requires physicals like we used to.
Just for
Well, I know
for
there
the
used to be.
athletics,
I
yeah.
didn't know if there still was, or if, like every 3 years you had to get.
There are medical requirements, the vaccinations that you mentioned, but
And
no.
we're getting ready to, do the immunizations. That's going to be coming pretty soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're on to action items.
First action item is receipt of donations, and Mr. Coddington, present those.
Thank you. Tonight we ask the board to accept the following donations: from Target Take Charge of Education, to Community Partnership Engagement Officers, to our mentoring programs. From Fairview Elementary PTO to Fairview Elementary, a donation to the social fund to be used for student necessities. From Rebecca Tiggeler to the RHS Band and Drama Club. From Reed Hospital and Healthcare Services to the RHS Band. Coons Home Center, Doug and Brenda Oler, Matt Napodi, Steve and our own Pat Heine, Bader Mechanical, Richmond Lodge 167 LOOM, to the RHS Athletics, donation to the Boys and Girls Swimming and Diving Camp Program. From Leslie and Fritz Adelsberger to the RHS Athletics for the Girls Golf Camp Fund. From Rod and Weiss to the RHS Athletics to the donation to the Football Camp Fund. And from Rod and Chris Weiss to the Uniform Fund for RHS Athletics. From Dave and Ellen Johnson, David and Phyllis Marling, Tom and Claire Milligan, Charles and Marilyn Ramey, all to the Civic Hall, proudly presenting series annual gift campaign. And a special recognition to ECT Technology, Electrical Control Technology, Justin and Harold Brown. We had some work. We had to call in a contractor to do over the high school in the kitchen. They repaired the control box in the dish room. We had a PO, we had an invoice, and Friday they said, let us be our contribution to Richmond Community Schools, and we want to give a special thank you to that. So we ask the board to accept these very generous donations of $12,765.35.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Aaron Stevens. Do I have a second? Suzanne Darengowski, seconded by Suzanne. All those in, wait, first of all, discussion.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely. Anybody else? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And thanks again to our very giving community.
Our next action item would be the approval of the annual financial goals. If you recall, this became a requirement that the state imposed through legislation a few years ago. Mr. Coddington will present his recommendation for the approval of the annual financial goals.
Attached to the annual financial goals for Richmond Community Schools is required by Indiana Code 21-10-3-4. Recommend that the Board of Trustees approve the 2013 annual financial goals as presented. They are posted on the board docs, but I would like to give an update on where we were the last fiscal year. Richmond Community Schools, with a 67.1% of all revenues for the 2011 fiscal year going to academic achievement or instructional support, as defined by Indiana Code, shall continue in 2013 to maintain this percentage by balance the general fund budget in 2013, reducing non-classroom personnel as needed, achieving appropriate general fund students to classroom teacher ratios, not adding any additional classified staff, continue to reduce general and administrative costs through co-op purchases and competitive price quotes. Give it a little moment. In front of you tonight, I did a study this afternoon of the North Central Conference and Wayne County schools. This is and the state average. The state average on money to the classroom is 58.6%. The goal is 65%, and you can see that our 67.1% is some of the highest in the North Central Conference and some of the highest in East Central Indiana. Be glad to entertain any questions anyone might have.
Do I hear a motion to approve the annual financial goals?
So moved.
Motion made by Suzanne Darengowski and seconded by Dixie Robinson. Discussion? Questions, comments? Jeff?
The CNI does not fall under classified, right?
CNA?
Or CNA?
Yes, it would.
I think, yeah.
So within, we need to modify this then, right? Not adding any additional classified staff.
No,
Or maybe we could, yes, it would need to be modified, net classified staff.
Okay.
If we would have that, not add, you understand what I mean? We're down.
The number stays the same, right? Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know
I'm
how to
okay
do
with
that.
Let
So,
me take-
what do we need to do here?
Additional.
Do we
It
need
already
to-
says additional. Doesn't that give us the room?
Not adding an additional class, well, okay, yeah, that's, as long as
Not
that,
adding any additional classified staff from the
that covers it.
2011-12 school year.
Okay, so are we adding on to our goals or revising our goals?
We're
or
okay,
leaving
since he said net, we're okay, because he says additional.
Okay. So we're leaving
I'm
it.
okay with that.
It's fine as is, I think.
Okay.
Here's what I would suggest. Not adding any additional classified staff from the 11-12 baseline data. Now, what that means is we know how many we had at the beginning of 11-12. We've reduced that by more than 20.
Okay.
Now, adding one back means we're still
Under.
a net 19.
Okay. So we're okay with what we have done. Okay, any other comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Our next action item has to do with a partnership. As you know, we have many partnerships that affect the educational opportunities that students have in all the buildings. This one is a new one. This one would be a new one if approved tonight, and this is with the Cope Environmental Center. And I would like for Mr. Millis to present this and explain to you how this interfaces with our elementary science curriculum.
Thank you. This evening, we'd like the board to approve a partnership with Cope Environmental Center and Richmond Community Schools. And this is another example. We talked earlier about the great facilities and places in Richmond and Wayne County. And Cope Environmental Center really offers that hands-on opportunity for our students. So this summer, we began working with them. I think they actually approached us, but it seemed to make a lot of sense. And the specifics of the opportunity this year would be that at the second grade, there would be 2 field trips for all of our second grade students and 2 outreach programs where they would come into the classroom and work with our students. The curriculum, if you recall, this summer we had intense training in the Indiana Science Initiative in our partnership with Purdue and that grant that we received. The second grade curriculum seemed to fit, and that would include air and weather, life cycles, balance and motion, and the curriculum is based on KITS, inquiry-based science, and journaling. Already, students have been working on life cycles, and if you've been in the classrooms, there are butterfly nets and quite a bit of excitement over the butterflies. So I think that will be one of the first trips shortly, and will be a nice fit. I want to compliment the Cope staff too. They actually we offered it, and they took advantage of it and trained with our teachers so they would know exactly what our teachers would be covering in the curriculum. There is a cost for this, and we agreed to support $8.50 a student to participate in this. We think it will be one of those real-world experiences that will complement their education. We'll look, and as we adjust our Title II, it could be that we could utilize some of Title II to support this. So that's kind of an ongoing adjustment that we make as the year unwinds with staff development and other needs. I think that's about it. And would ask the board to approve that partnership, and I think Dr. Borf and I are very excited about it, as well as our staff.
Do I have a motion to approve the agreement with Cope Environmental Center?
Also move.
Motion made by Jeff Slifer and seconded by Aaron Stevens. Comments, questions?
I think that's great. Is that adding something that maybe we wouldn't have been able to do ourselves with second graders? I mean, why second graders?
We might have been able to have some of the field trips. We might have been able to do that. But this is more coordinated.
Yeah.
And the COPE actually comes into the classrooms. Yes, we might have been able to do that, but not on a systematic basis. This makes it so much more connected to the curriculum.
Well, and we also know that one of our major goals is reading, and we also know that the vocabulary building that takes place on those trips is pretty amazing too. So that sounds exciting.
Well, and it's kind of twofold. It's a great opportunity for our students but I'm sure that our teachers will be
Yes.
learning at
Sure.
the same time.
I agree.
So,
That's good. Sounds really good.
Great.
Now, Mrs. Morgeson, you need to
We need to
appoint
Right.
someone for
Do
this.
we need to approve this first, or will that be included in?
You haven't
the
already
same-
taken the vote on this. That needs to happen first.
Okay. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Now you need to have an appointment made because we need 2 signatories on this, and generally it's the president and the vice president for this agreement. Neither of them are here, so obviously you'll be one, but you'll need to make an appointment for someone
And
else.
I have asked Jeff if he would be the second signature, so if I could have a motion for him to be appointed as the second person to sign.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So moved.
Okay, motion made by Suzanne
I'll second.
and seconded by Aaron. Any comments or questions?
Am I allowed to vote for myself?
Sure. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Careful,
Okay,
this is how
motion
it
carried.
starts.
Jeff
saying.
has to add his name. Okay, we're ready to go on now to the master plan.
We continue to have elements of our master plan unfold before us. We have most of it implemented this year, but I'm going to ask Mr. Mays to come to the podium and talk to the board about the Dennis Gymnasium bids. He can just give you an explanation of where we are in the process tonight.
Okay, I appreciate the opportunity. One thing I would like to add before we get started, Crestdale, on the new addition, we're probably about a week ahead of schedule, so we don't see any problems in making the transition of the students in the gymnasium to the new addition over fall break. So they're laying carpet starting tomorrow, so we're in good shape there.
That's exciting.
We received bids yesterday for the addition onto, the gymnasium addition onto Dennis, and we had 7 bidders. We had 2 local bidders and 5 out of town. 2 were from Ohio, and the other 3 were from Indianapolis and Zionsville. We actually have 2 distinct decisions to make, one or the other. Thor Construction was the low bidder of $1,270,000 for a addition onto the gym that we would use metal siding. We had metal siding as a deduct so that we could see what that would cost and what impact it would have on the project. The slide that you see before you shows that we were putting brick 8 feet high or 8 inches above the doors, exterior doors, and then we were putting metal siding all the way around the exterior portion of the building. This is similar to what was done at the Boys and Girls Club, where they have split-face block on the exterior up to about 8 feet, and then metal siding from there up. At Dennis, the Boys and Girls Club was a building all on its own. At Dennis, we do have a campus-type building of several additions that were added on to the original building, which are all brick, a little bit of decorative limestone, and so forth. But here, as you can see, we would be adding metal siding. The metal siding, we would hope, would be a compatible color to the brick so that it would blend in as much as you could with the siding. On brick, you have a life expectancy, let's say, of 60, 70 years. But there's a 30-year cycle that you would still have to come back and do some tuck pointing, which we're doing at the high school, and we have been doing it at the high school the last 4 or 5 years. We did it at Test. We're going to be doing a little bit at Dennis. On the other side of that, then the metal siding has a 20-year warranty, and probably in 25 years, between 20 and 25 years, you'd have to come back and recoat the outside. If you've noticed in some areas of metal building, siding building, the light and stuff does fade sometimes, the exterior color of the building. So not only would you have to bring that back up, but you might have to fix some rust spots. So with Thor's bid of $1,270,000, theirs has the metal siding. The other low bid was from L.R. Turner out of Zionsville, Indiana, and their bid is $1,314,000, and that is with brick on all sides of the building and all the way around. What we've done on the brick portion doesn't work. What we've done on the brick portion is we followed some of the lines of the existing building with a stacked bond brick, and that's why you see a horizontal line about halfway up. There's another horizontal line about where the lower part of the doors are, and those blend in with what's at the school. Now, we do have a metal roof. The other roofs on the building vary from slate to a shingle composition roof. We do have metal. The difference between L.R. Turner and Stamper or Thor is about $44,000. So we have a $44,000 savings using the metal siding on the total project cost. I believe that if we use the metal siding, it would blend in with the campus, knowing that you're going to see metal siding. But I think the colors and how we approach the exterior hopefully would blend in with the facility that's there. But that's the choice. It goes down to one. The higher bid of $44,000, contractor from Zionsville, Indiana, versus a local contractor of $1,270,000, Thor Construction, which is the same combination of contractors that we're using at Crestdale as we speak. The estimate was $1,200,000, and that we are $70,000 over that, so that $44,000 would go towards that $70,000. Then we also had the gym or the cafeteria portion reworked over the summer, and we were expecting that that cost would also be able to come out of the $1.2 million. So realistically, we would have had about $1 million or a little less to do the gym. Even though I said it was going to cost $1.2 million, that's why we had the deduct on the metal siding to try to keep the cost down. The other thing that we did different than the Boys and Girls Club is on the inside of the gym. We did not want to sacrifice using concrete block and sound block all the way up to the roof. At the Boys and Girls Club, we used concrete block up to 12 feet, and then from there up we used insulation. But we thought with the use that the gym is going to get at Dennis, that we should maintain the block similar to what Tiernan Center is, all the way up on the inside. So the building inside will look just like Tiernan Center. The building outside, if we go with the metal siding or the brick, is dependent upon aesthetics and how you look at it. There's a $44,000 savings, it's there, and a local contractor.
A question I have is, in the tabulation that we were looking at today, it appeared on the right-hand column, there was more than a $44,000 spread between the one with the brick and the one with the metal siding. Can you explain what that spread was
Well, there was
about?
a couple different, the difference is actually 1.270, subtract that from 1.314, and that's the 44. That's the 44,000. But the number you're also looking at is that the Thor Construction gave us a deduct alternate of 51,000 to eliminate the brick. But their base bid was also higher, so that kind of made that difference. But L.R. Turner, their base bid was the lowest, but they were only going to give us $15,000 to eliminate the siding, versus it ranged from 85,000 high as a deduct from other contractors down to the 15,000 of L.R. Turner. We had 34,000, 31,000, 27,000, so that was kind of all over the place. But when you go down and look at the two lowest bidders, it's either Thor or L.R. Turner, based upon that alternate that we take.
Okay, could you then specify, if we do the brick, what is that going to, what's the estimate to do brick?
It's 44, well,
What's the total amount to do brick?
about 36.
On the lowest bid?
About $36,000.
But a million what?
I'm sorry?
$1,314,000?
No, $1,270,000.
Okay.
If we didn't do the brick.
And
If we did the brick, it's $1,314,000.
Okay. And can you also specify the difference between what we have appropriated for this and what it's costing? Is there a difference of money?
Refer that to Mr. Coddington.
Yes, back in May, we asked for an appropriation for the Dennis projects of $1,276,000. And that was to do the kitchen, the summer projects, and the new gym. We haven't closed yet on the Dennis summer project. We're still wrapping that up, but it's going to be approximately $300,000. So if you take $300,000 off the 112,760, you're left with an appropriation of approximately $960 or $1 million appropriation, and we have a low bid here of $1,270,000. So we're $270,000 short in appropriation.
Okay.
Can I ask a question on that appropriation before we go
Yes.
forward?
Slifer.
When we talked about this number a little bit earlier, but I was thinking, when we come out and we appropriated the 1.2, that was before we went to the full-size gym and before we started talking about doing the cafeteria. I thought that was extra, because I was thinking that we asked to make it the full-size gym because we didn't have another one that was in the...
Yes, and there it was, I thought it was a $1.2 million total. That's what I presented. That's what we went and got. I was wrong on that.
But
it was 1.2. You thought you were approving 1.2 plus 3.
Right.
And
because there was also a square footage cost difference going to the bigger
some
gym.
of that, Jeff is right on some of that, is that we had three options. We had a $600,000 gym, we had an $800,000 or $900,000 gym, and then we had a $1.2 million gym.
That's where I'm getting
The $1.2 million gym included seating, space for seating of 400, which is what, and a full-size regulation floor, which only the Hibbard gym has at this point. The test gym is not a full-size intermediate school gym. So then we said, okay, we can go back to 800,000 and we'll lose the seating. We'll still keep a full-size floor. If we go down to 600,000, we'll put 2 rooftop units to heat and cool the gym, and we'll have a intermediate school size basketball court, which is not full size. And so those were the 3 that we were talking about when Bob was.
So that's where I got the
was
1.2,
appropriating the money.
because we said that we wanted a full-size gym.
And when we presented it to
Okay.
the board said, yes, we would like to have the full-size gym. We were talking about taking bleachers from Tiernan Center and putting them in there, and that's how we came up with the 400. In talking with other staff members, athletic staff members and so forth, they recognize that they can use that Dennis gym full regulation floor, and it'll be utilized all the time because of the various programs that they have, plus the various rental opportunities that we would have for the community to be able to use a full-size gym. There's a lot of complaints that we do not have a full-size gym for rental other than Hibbard. And if you drove down by Hibbard all last winter, it was full every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, being used.
So that's where I came up with the
Yeah.
1.5 that we were
That's
going to budget.
exactly right. That's exactly right.
So we actually have 2 discussion topics here, or at least what I'm thinking is, so do we want to spend the extra money to do brick on the Dennis Gymnasium, and obviously we don't have enough money. So that seems to be the theme this evening. So where do we go with this?
This is what I would suggest. It would be great to take action on this tonight, but I think what you're going to want us to do is to show you where the money will come from in whichever direction we go. You have 2 board members who are not here tonight, and we would like for this to be a decision by everybody who's involved in this. Mr. Coddington and Mr. Mays will work before the next meeting to show you whichever decision you go, if you want the full brick, if you don't want the full brick, where that will come from. There are some ways that we could pay for this to a point, and we may have to be looking at what's available through capital projects in the next calendar year. We may have to look at, again, rainy day funds. I'm not going to suggest that we'll go any one direction, but we can show you, we can give you some scenarios.
Can I ask it?
We've got
Well, if, you can go first.
Aaron.
What would be the cost of heating savings between the 2 if we went brick as opposed to the siding?
What would be the one, sorry?
The cost savings in heating, if there is a difference between the brick and the siding?
Hopefully, there wouldn't be a difference, that it would be insulated properly. The brick does allow for a little more protection and probably a little less heating cost and/or air conditioning.
If further discussion, if I don't know, Ron, if it's possible to be more specific on that in our further in our future discussions.
I think that's a good question. It's a good question. We will do that. We will come back when we make our presentation and include that. I think to add on to what Dr. Borth said, even though that we're trying to get the building open for spring break, I don't think 2 weeks is going to hurt us at all. Our goal is to try to get it under roof in December and then work through the winter inside. Even though we're losing 2 weeks, I still think that can happen. Just for your information, We also have 60 days to, that the contractors have to hold their prices. So it's not a question whether, okay, if we don't accept the bids tonight, what are the bids going to be in 2 weeks, okay? In the bid process, our specifications require 60 days.
And those bids were received yesterday, correct?
I'm sorry?
Those bids were received yesterday?
Yes, sir. Yes, yes.
Which is another reason why we're responding as we are without some of the pieces that you might want. We'll have that ready at the next meeting.
Jeff?
With both options, was the roof identical?
Yes, the roof was identical.
In both options, okay.
Yeah, because we actually do have a metal building that we're running the masonry walls, and then we're going to set the metal building inside those masonry walls so we can get them up before the cold weather. And then, yes, you have the pre-engineered columns and the pre-engineered roof and a standing seam roof system.
So it won't leak.
Yeah. Yeah,
The-
it's
the other-
standing seam, rolled seam, yes.
The other, just for a comparison, R.L. Turner's bid was $1.34 million for full brick. What was Thor Construction's bid for the full brick?
Yeah, Thor's Construction was $1,321,000.
With
So
full
it's a
brick?
So it's a fairly competitive bid
Yes.
then?
Oh, when you look at Smerelli in that same basis, they were third, and they had $1,325,000. So there's $4,000 difference between the second and third bidder, which is phenomenal on this size project.
Well, and I guess the other piece is, you could forward us the tabulations too, so we can see those. Honestly, and I know we got a lot to discuss, but $44,000 difference on brick doesn't sound like much to me.
I thought the same thing.
Especially since that whole building is brick, so. But I will look forward to the information. I thank you. That's all my questions.
Dixie?
Well, just how much rent does a full-size gym generate?
Well, we can bring some of that information back as well. I don't know that we can answer that right off.
Full-size gym, how much rent does it generate?
$44,000.
A night. A night.
A night?
A night.
We can always hope.
Suzanne, did you have?
Yeah, mine's along the same line as the energy savings. Is I want to make sure we're looking at a bigger picture too, as far as
Yes.
longevity of the material. I mean, we're going to have Dennis Middle School forever, and so I want to make sure that we aren't to save 40. I know right now we're talking about not having money, but to save 44,000, are we sacrificing longevity with a building? And I know aluminum's tough, but
I think it's important
Great
for,
dialogue, and that's what we need to give you at the next meeting, so that then you
I
can,
just don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish,
Yeah.
that whole thing.
Well, the value of the dollar today, by spending that as opposed to 10 or 20 years from now, is not going to be the same. So,
well, and we need to kind of look at a crystal ball, and I don't know how you would do that.
Yeah,
Let's say in 20 years, you say, wow, let's get rid of, because the design is there, and you could say, let's get rid of the metal siding and put brick. And so you're not going to put brick on there for $44,000. You're probably going to be $100,000 at that point.
It would be more than that.
well, and I think it's important for the people that's listening to also realize that when we talked about the deficit earlier, the $780,000 for next year, that was a general fund deficit. This most likely, unless we decide to pay for the difference out of the general fund, this most likely will stay either CPF or transfer of some monies into the rainy day, so we're not talking the same funds.
Right. Yeah, and there won't be a recommendation to pay for it out of the general fund.
I just want us to be responsible for quality. I want to make sure it's quality.
I do too.
Right.
So do we need to do anything?
No, you don't.
More? Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I will let you deal with the next part.
With what?
I'll let you deal with the next part, the strategic plan.
Okay. Well, even though this is actually a business meeting, we are going to have work session on our district strategic plan. And do you want to do a little
Sure.
bit of background information, and then we'll go from there?
Be glad to do that. Last year, we began the year with a strategic plan that came out of some board retreats. They were the board was trained to put together a strategic plan that guided much of our effort last year. If you recall, we had a board goal of 90%. On our way to 90%, we will increase our graduation rate, our language arts, I-STEP, math I-STEP. This is work that has been done with the assistance of a facilitator again this year, but this facilitator this year was Steve Benjamin. Dr. Benjamin has worked with the Dennis Middle School last year. He worked with Test and at the high school. He continues to work with the entire school system in a continuous improvement model, and began working with the board some weeks ago in putting together a revised strategic plan that would guide all of our efforts as we're trying to align the building level continuous improvement plans with the board's continuous improvement plan. And so what we're discussing tonight would be a first draft of what that continuous improvement or strategic plan looks like. You'll notice that there is a slight revision of the vision, pretty dramatic revision of the mission. But what's new in this, and I think which will be an interesting conversation for the board, is a set of identified values or beliefs that the board has. And in the right-hand column in this table, it shows how those values are actually lived, or how they're demonstrated. Could be on a weekly basis, daily, annual, and that can remain live all through the year as we show how we're living those values. And then we have performance targets, and that's where you'll see the continuation of much of the strategic plan from last year. Those performance targets build on the 90% plus of students reading at or above grade level, achieving national standards, graduating with their cohort, and so on. You can read that for yourselves. But the board is asked tonight in this work session to review this, look at items that you might want to revise, perhaps that you'd like to enhance, or even change. So it's an open discussion on this document. Dr. Benjamin will come back to work with you again once he understands what some of your preferences are, and the goal is to get a strategic plan underway within the next few weeks.
With that said, we need to begin our conversation as to any improvements or additions or deletions that any of you would like to suggest.
I would say one of the things that we, at the conference that we attended, this actually was a fairly covered topic. And actually, I got a lot of good ideas. I just haven't had time since we just got back yesterday. But there's a lot of information out there with corporations. It seems like the balanced scorecard type of approach, how we're using stuff like this to determine administrator raises and or the teacher raises based on the RISE model. It's interesting. There's a lot of information out there. So I got armed with more information, which makes me more dangerous. But I guess the timeline for us to have this completed, have you said within a couple of weeks? Is that
It'd be nice to do that because our building improvement teams are well underway right now, and they need to align themselves with
that.
with your goal.
Okay.
Anybody else has any? Do you want to start and work down and?
Probably be a good idea. It's,
I think the part that we're especially supposed to look at tonight is, well, the value and the brief explanations of the values.
He needed your feedback on that.
Correct. And so, so we'll just start with systems approach. So the value is that we are most successful when everyone in our learning organization works together to achieve common goals. We can enhance efficiency and effectiveness by achieving alignment across our system. We are systems thinkers.
I like that.
So does anybody feel that there is a part on the how RCS is living and embedding that value that you would like to add, or is there anything you want changed?
Keep in mind that when we talked with him about this, this was the living portion of the document
Right.
throughout the year. And this could change from meeting to meeting, depending on what you would like to draw attention to in the way of recognizing someone or something that embeds value in the system or reflects the value that you have for the system. It almost could take the place of the snapshots of success at each of the board meetings.
Well, what I like about this one in particular is that it just simply spells out that everyone, from the top administrator to everyone in this corporation, working together with the same vision, same goal, and thinking on the same in the same thought, forward thinking, and I really appreciate that. It doesn't put the burden on just one segment of the employees, the teachers, the administrators, or even the board. It puts, the emphasis on everybody working together and thinking in the same level.
One of the things that I noticed that I felt was missing throughout the document, and I'm not exactly sure where it needs to go, maybe several places, but I noticed that professional development for our staff, investing in our staff. We talk a lot about what we want them to do, but there isn't any place that tells that we are going to prepare them to be able to do that task. So I don't know if anybody else noticed that or feels that that's important, but
and that could fit under the systems approach. I mean, the idea that even though it would be tailored to individuals, the idea of taking a systems approach to who needs what, when, or it could be excellence, high expectations. Some of this is supposed to be what we are doing on the far right column.
On the continuous improvement,
That would be,
we constantly try to find better ways of doing our work, and when we achieve our goals, we set higher targets. That might be a natural for staff development.
Staying
Well,
in the system approach is what you're saying?
No, maybe that belongs under continuous improvement.
But there was a place where it also talked about technology, that we were, I don't know where that was.
I could go under high expectations as well.
Sure.
I need to ask a question, I'm sorry, but again, this is going to go, we're taking the main subject of the leadership value, and we just define that as those main boxes. And right now, we're creating living proof of that, I guess is the way to say that.
Right.
Now,
Evidence.
Does this then, that's what goes to the school for them to come back and say, this is how we're measuring that? I guess I'm still, I know we have the performance indicators at the bottom, that talk about what we would expect, the I-STEP scores, the graduation rate, those types of things. But the cabinet members and/or the individual school will be coming back with measurements or suggestions for us how to measure these?
I don't know that we would, the idea was that the cabinet or the buildings would measure the attainment of the values. We would be looking at the performance targets.
The performance targets is strictly what goes to them then?
Correct. But one of the things that would help the buildings and the cabinet, when we develop the performance targets and our strategies, we would make sure that our strategies are in alignment with the values set out by the board. And that's when you would see some of our efforts come to be illustrated on the right side of that chart. As the year unfolds, the strategies that we employ would become the embodiment of some of your values.
Of the value. So then when we get into, where is Pat when we need her?
Oh, now that's on record too, don't forget.
But when we get into the accountability piece of it, as a leadership value, that's not something that is going to tie then, or we want to tie or align with the new RISE model for administrators and teachers.
Down the road, it very well may be something that we want to align.
Because I'm thinking, as I'm trying to parallel what we want to do with it, and one of the questions that we're asking ourselves now is, how do you define leadership? Well, we're defining leadership here, in a sense. So the strategy that we use here in defining leadership needs to be the same strategies that we use for your evaluations.
It would be a great tool to use, even, and I know we're not talking about collective bargaining, but
well, I mean, it's the RISE model for the administrators, the RISE model for the teachers. It's the same.
It kind of meshes with the conversation we've had on the compensation model, too.
Well, that's where I was going with it.
Yeah.
And these leadership values are not just plucked out of the air, and we need to remember and remind, I guess, those who are listening that these are best practices for high-performing schools. This idea of systems approach, accountability.
They're based on effective school research.
Absolutely. Effective school research, and that's why they are what they are, and the idea of teamwork and high expectations. So, and what we I think need to spend some time doing, and maybe it's not just us. We're taking the first sort of stab at it, and in part communicating this out. This is our first opportunity to talk about what those values are, what we see them being. But it's our chance to say, okay, if we want to be systems thinkers, how are we demonstrating that now? And if we can't come up with ways that we are demonstrating that now, then we may need to adjust our strategies, right? I mean, that's the point. Accountability, same thing. How are we demonstrating that? How are we demonstrating shared leadership? And how are we communicating that? High expectations is one we've talked about often. We want to be a corporation that has high expectations for everyone involved. Well, how do we communicate that? How do we demonstrate it? What are we doing about that? How have we put that into words that people understand, so that we can make sure everyone's on board? I mean, so those are the kinds of conversations I think we have to have. And these were a few examples, such as the common assessments. We're developing some common assessments as a system approach, as evidence of our systems approach. Well, what's the reason for that? That way we were able to communicate across the district what's working and whether best practices are working or not working, yes? Isn't that the idea? So there are some examples of each of these values, and I don't know that we need to come up with tons more, but I think we probably could. But then my question is, as we talk about this in each meeting, we might then, like you said, add, or we might say, how are we demonstrating that? How are we being held accountable for the parents as leaders? The idea is great of building more parents who have knowledge of the academic support, how to academically support their kids. How do we know that's working? Those are the kinds of questions you're expecting from us, yes?
It would, in the best of all possible worlds, it would have been nice for us to have this document prior to the implementation of some of our evaluation tools.
Right.
But we will now have this, and as we move through our evaluation cycle and revise those evaluation tools towards the end of the year, preparing for the next year, this is a nice document to have to make sure it's all in alignment. But I think you're going to find, because this is based on effective schools research and other school research, I think you're going to find that much of our evaluation tools are also already in alignment, because
Right.
they're also based on best practice, the RISE
It
models.
gives us a framework to be sure,
That's right.
which in the past we haven't had. I mean, we kind of go out and look for new research and new proof every time, and I think having these values, and maybe we should just go through them, and just, instead of one by one, let's just say what they are, because I think they're solid. Intuitively,
Why don't you do that?
intuitively, it seems like they would be, but knowing that they're backed up with research, I think makes them even stronger. So, you already read the systems approach, and we got a little creative. I know when we were writing these up that we added our "We Are Richmond" statement afterwards to sort of sum it up, and it gives us a little bit of marketable language to use too, I think, which is kind of nice for the communication group. You've already read, we are most successful when everyone in our learning organization works together to achieve common goals. We can enhance efficiency and effectiveness by achieving alignment across our system. We are systems thinkers. Accountability. Each person affiliated with RCS, the RCS system, including students, employees, parents, family members, and community stakeholders, share accountability for our performance results and for providing personal best effort in support of our goals. We are accountable. Shared leadership. I like this one. We work as a team. Each member provides essential leadership in support of our common goals. We are team players. High expectations. Our learning organization requires that we maintain high expectations for one another and for self. We are expecting great things. Evidence-based decision-making. We make decisions after careful consideration of the most compelling research and data analysis. We are data-driven. You saw an example of that when we were asking about the gymnasium at Dennis. We want to know, are we going to save money? Is it going to last long? Those are good questions. Continuous improvement. As good as we are, we know we can always achieve better results. We constantly try to find better ways of doing our work, and when we achieve our goals, we set higher targets. We are innovative. That's another one that comes up often. People want schools to behave more like businesses. That's a very business-like approach. Social responsibility. We ensure that we are good partners within our community and that our students and employees support local individuals and organizations. We demonstrate wise stewardship of public resources and ensure that our graduates are ready to shoulder their civic responsibilities. We are good citizens. Thank you. Sorry for the editorial comment along with it. So the next steps, what are the next steps? That's my question. What should they be?
Well, I think what Dr. Benjamin's hoping to find out would be whether you are satisfied that this captures your thoughts. Because he would like to come back and help you polish this document and have it ready for approval at a subsequent board meeting.
Okay.
We're really only approving the value and belief part, though.
Right.
Well, you're also, it's a total document, though, and it will have the performance targets on here as well. The focus areas for strategic planning and associated performance targets. That will also be a part of the plan.
But the evidence is going to be constantly moving.
The
so
evidence
that's
will
not-
be constantly
That's
changing.
not a, yeah.
That's right.
We don't have to worry about.
These are our sort of first proof points.
Well, these
Things
really
that we-
align well.
I think
I mean,
they're
even-
worded very well.
Even when we talk about, the social responsibility, we want our staff involved in the public. We want to encourage their participation in clubs and organizations.
And our students to be good citizens and to understand their responsibility in the community. And with
What you saw tonight was a great demonstration of that one.
absolutely. Well, I was thinking that too. We could just start adding things in. So, yeah, I like them. I like that we've given ourselves briefer versions to be able to sort of use in communicating out. So I think that's good.
So we really need to spend the time then talking about the focus areas then for the targets, like you said, the performance targets.
Well, and then some other things that need to happen are that this would then go to discussion, yes?
That's right.
Okay. And then out to, presumably then out further than that with
Yeah, it needs to go out to the
students,
community.
teachers,
It needs to
community.
go to the broader community because it affects interaction with the community. That will be a
Right.
part of what's measured and what's illustrated.
Well, and these things, while these values, while they are based on effective school research, they're also pretty common themes that we've heard over the course of the last several years from the community that have said, we expect you to be high achievers. We expect you to be socially responsible and fiscally responsible. Continuous improvement is one I hear from the business community often. So, and we've been doing that too. So.
Well, if you I know you heard this, but it's kind of nice to repeat it for the community. Dr. Benjamin does this work with boards throughout the state.
Yes.
And he looked at the strategic plan that had already been in place and was very complimentary of it, and said that some good work had been done by the board. And what he advised the board to do was to remain consistent with those long-range goals. The worst thing he said to do was to change those long-range goals on an annual basis because the system needed that stability.
And we talked
from the
about a
board.
2020 almost. I mean, I know we haven't really spoken about that yet, but we talked about the idea of sort of heading for 2020 vision.
Right, meaning
Yes.
2020 in a lot of ways.
2020 in a lot of ways, but to achieve that consistency, as you said, to keep on task, on target. So.
Well,
Dixie?
and for our final meeting of editing with him, since you and the administrative team have to implement this throughout the system, I think it would be nice to have the rest of the administrative team join us in that final.
I think that would be great.
I think that would make a lot of sense to do that.
Because there could be things that we haven't thought about or that need attention.
So, am I hearing you say that basically the values, everyone is okay with the values? And so do we want to look at the performance targets now and see if there's any changes that need to be made there?
Might we talk about the vision and the mission first, too?
Yes. The vision is by 2020, Richmond Community Schools will be the highest performing school system in East Central Indiana. So any Anybody have any changes they want to make there or recommendations for word changes?
It's good by me.
I think it's good.
Yeah, we talked a lot about, is that too far out? We talked a lot about
I will say,
achievability and that sort of thing. So.
when we first talked 2020, I thought, well, that's 7
Seems too
years
far
ago.
away.
But you know, one of the
Except it isn't.
Fort Wayne school system, they were in their 6th year of their plan, and so as I was looking at how they, and each year their academic data went up tremendously, and they were structured for 6 years. So I mean. So after
There will be goals along the way, so that we'll certainly be looking at. So that, I think that helps bridge that long-term also.
Now, will we set those goals or benchmarks, or will those come back from recommendations of the administrators? That should be your guys'
Well, we would, I was going to say, we would like to have some input in helping you get to the point where you set some targets.
And then the mission reads, develop students who are literate, responsible, proficient in state and national standards, and college career ready.
I will tell you that I got an email from Pat who felt like this was some nice work, but she also felt like it was very focused on tests.
Yes.
And while she knows that we're measured by that and that we have to be accountable to various levels of government on that, she also suggested that we may want to be very specific, that we're also producing thoughtful, you know.
The creativity seems to sort of been sucked out of it a little bit.
Well, you know,
Love of
creativity,
learning.
that's a 21st century skill. So,
Also, on the word develop, I mean, that's what we do. And we don't have the word, I was thinking of maybe the word graduate, because graduate students who are, because that's our ultimate goal. I don't know, that's just a thought.
I like that. Graduate students who are literate, responsible, proficient in state and national standards, and college career ready.
I like that.
Well, that will be a change that I'll send to Dr. Benjamin. And if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and send Pat's comments to him.
Sure. And one of the reasons why we didn't include or initially talk about creativity and some of those kinds of things is we were looking for measurable.
They're hard to measure. It's hard to say when you've arrived.
We'd have to set something that, how many are involved in creative arts classes or something like that. I mean, that would be hard to.
And if I remember the conversation, we did talk about the fact of having state and national standards included in our mission, but that's what we're dealing with. I mean, that's how we're measured. So maybe Dr. Benjamin could think of a way to incorporate Pat's thinking.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking
also.
too.
Well, and it's part of why we, on our, as in the conversation, as I recall, under continuous improvement, when we talked about the verbiage there, we intentionally put "we are innovative" there as sort of the blanket statement or the sort of summary statement there, because we did want to convey that creative problem solving and creativity was an issue that we wanted to hold high. So.
You know, we might look, I'll talk to him about also looking at that social responsibility piece on the values. That might be where we could tweak that some to talk about students being taught how to interact responsibly and respectfully with one another, and I'll
Yeah, the
suggest
things
that.
I think that we're missing that cause us pause, and we earlier when we had the conversation, it did there too, were the arts, creativity, again, just that innovation, love of learning. Talked about that. So again, how do you measure that? I don't know, but we hold it important, just don't know how to measure it.
Okay, moving on to the performance targets. Starting out with highest student achievement. We have 90% plus of our students K-12 read on or above grade level. 90% plus of students master state and national standards. And 90+% of students graduate in their cohort.
And, you know, this didn't change.
Well, it did quite a bit, actually, because our reading goal last year was just third grade, right?
That's true. That's the major change.
That
K-12.
you expanded it, but you're using the same target goal, 90%.
Right.
And I think that was a wise decision if you were to take into consideration his advice that we need to stay with a consistent target for at least for a time, because we're not there.
Well, and one of the things that's being worked on right now that we haven't had before is we haven't really known the reading levels of our secondary students at the
That's
high
right.
school.
That's right.
Yeah, because, K through 11 took the reading scholastic inventory?
Not
Yeah,
everybody
up
took
until
that.
recently.
5 through 11 did the SRI, and the K to 5, we have other data.
K to 5, okay.
Linda.
But they did, at our conference, one of the things that they talked about was how important it was to know the reading level of each child in your district.
Even through the high school.
Yes.
So that you know how to help them, whether they're, at sixth grade reading level or you can, and they're in third grade, you need to know to further that reading achievement.
Didn't we
So-
talk about leaving it at master state standards? Assuming that if the national standards came into play, it would be because they became the state standard?
I'd have to go back and look at my notes on that. You may be right.
Yeah.
And it's probably not a big deal. It's just that, given all of the conversations that are going to be coming up soon about Common Core and those kinds of things, it might be good for us to.
Okay, so everybody okay to move on here to safe and orderly learning environments? 95+% of students demonstrate responsible behavior on a daily basis, and RCS students demonstrate a 96% plus attendance rate.
And these are where you all would come back with how we would measure, which most of them are already pretty
Now, these are
defined.
These are long-term goals, and then we would set the target expectations on how we get there, what step we would take towards that goal this year.
On a
subsequent year.
yearly basis.
Okay, any comments, any more comments? Homeschool community partnerships and communications. 95+% of parents, family members, guardians are rated as actively engaged in their child's education. The second one is maintain the number of community partnerships at 125 or more, and 95+% of stakeholders rate communication with RCS as excellent or very good.
And I don't think the community really understands how many community partnerships that we have had for a long time, really. it's pretty amazing.
When Dr. Benjamin was suggesting that we, initially he talked about, we should talk about maybe adding like 5 per year. And when we told him how many we actually had, he said, well, maybe we should talk about maintaining the number that we have. So I think that we are doing very well in that category.
Okay, high-performing employees. 90+% of employees are rated highly effective, or are observed making meaningful improvement toward these targets. And the second one is RCS employees demonstrate a 95+% attendance rate. Comments? Is that okay?
And those terms, highly effective and effective, are defined in the evaluation models already. So those aren't terms, again, that we made up. Those are clearly defined for us.
That's in legislation now.
Right. But, but that's the reason why we're using those terms, because they're already there.
And also on number 2, RCS employees, that includes all of our employees.
That's right.
Very important to be on the job. So efficient and effective operations. 100% of classrooms provide technology resource consistent with 21st century needs. 100% of employees use available technology effectively. Each building receives Energy Star certification, and RCS consistently maintains a balanced budget with no deficit spending.
Again, these are long-term. These are not something that are going to, like 100% technology. Some of those, clearly that's not going to happen overnight, but that's our goal.
We also talked about the Energy Star certification might be extremely difficult
for Richmond High School.
For Richmond High School.
For the high school, that's right.
Any other comments? Okay, customer or stakeholder satisfaction and marketing. Our enrollment will increase by an average of at least 25 students each year. 90+% of stakeholders are very satisfied or satisfied with RCS. Comments?
And we already survey our families, but it would be obvious that we would be creating a more of a systematic approach to asking those questions, right?
Other than the typo, I like it.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay.
We have good information to send back to Dr. Benson.
Good, thank you. And now we're ready for our press conference. They did this to me on purpose, Brian, my very first
I have no comment.
Thanks. Then moving right along to our consent items.
Well, now hold on. Let me get to the consent items. Okay.
I'm
Thank you.
assisting.
Thank you. Our consent items tonight include the approval of minutes, September 12th board meeting, and the executive session, September 17th executive session as well. Recommendation from Human Resources, and there is an addendum posted to the web. A recommendation from Accounts Payable. Also a recommendation to file reports, summer school, and also a recommendation for the filing of reports involving the monthly financial report. Those items I would recommend for approval on the consent agenda or consent items.
Do I hear a motion to accept these consent items?
I so move.
Jeff Slifer makes the motion. Do I hear a second? Suzanne seconds the motion. Comments, questions? I just have one, I guess, comment or request on the summer school report. I was wondering what the information that you gave us, what are the implications that those give us for our next year's summer school program? You don't have to answer now, but I do know that there was a financial circumstance there where I don't think the state paid us as much as we thought they were going to, and so I was just wondering if we're thinking ahead to next summer and what we have learned from this summer that will.
We'd be glad to do a follow-up to the summer school report.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else?
Well, it was just some of the data that was provided. There's some other data that could be enhanced, but there's actually, when you compare the attendance rate, like for K through 6, there's quite a bit of a drop in that. I didn't take the time to figure out how many days that would equate to, but...
Are you talking about the summer school report?
Yeah, our internal summer school, that not the third grade academy, but the one at C.R. Richardson. We had more students this summer, so I think the more students that you enroll, you're going to have some more issues with that.
When do you know if they're, how they're going to reimburse, or if they're fully going to reimburse whatever it is that you're doing?
We will be notified shortly after they calculate all of the requests from all the school corporations. I think the way they set this up would be my guess that they are covering 100% 1 through 3rd in reading versus past years when they covered actually K through 12 that would lead to Core 40 completion. I think the reasoning behind that is that they anticipated many more corporations participating this summer because of the iRead test. So I think they have budgets too that they set in appropriations, so I think they're looking at their appropriations and thinking about that.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And next, we are on to our second public commentary. Does any of we still have people with us. Does anyone wish to speak?
Publix. We have Publix.
Well, we figured you had something to say. Okay. Anybody? Okay, thanks. We're ready for our follow-up, old business. Suzanne.
We have had in the past some previous conversations regarding culture and changes to culture, and communication is one that came up before. And one of the ones that I haven't heard an update on is internal communications. We had talked about the representation at the discussion table.
Mm-hmm.
And we had asked if each of the schools was represented at the discussion table, and I understand that's currently not the case. Is there any update on that?
There is an update on that. The REA has, the leadership has been working with me, or at least conferring with me, and would also like to have every building represented at the discussion table. But their constitution has been developed in such a way that that doesn't necessarily have to happen. There are elections, and I guess, I'm not familiar with the Constitution, but my understanding is that there could be as many as 3 or 4 people from the same building selected, and there may be other buildings totally out of the picture when it comes to representation. So what Wendy Bennett, who is the current president, informed me of was that they're working at redrawing their constitution, which takes a little time, but that's one of their goals for this year. And as recently as this week, she said that that is a priority of theirs, and they would like to see something like that happen too. Now, that has to be voted upon. That's not just something she can say she'd like to have and it's done. But they understand the importance of having every building with a voice at that discussion table.
Well, because that's the formal way in which you need to communicate to the faculty.
That's
it
right.
becomes very critical that there's someone at that table from every building.
We talk about the importance of every teacher having a voice.
Right.
Well, that's not quite possible for every single teacher all the time to have an equal volume, I'll say. They can, all the staff members can communicate by way of email
Right.
to me or leave a message or even to you. But the formal process is we have an exclusive rep. That exclusive rep is the Richmond Education Association. And they convene, along with us, a team to meet and discuss items every month. And we go beyond what we need to do by law in allowing topics to be discussed. Indiana is very specific about what is discussable and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
We're fairly liberal
Yeah.
on that. If it's not in legislation, many times we go ahead and talk about it anyway. And our realization was that we talk about some things, but we're realizing that not every building has a voice at the table,
Right.
and that's not anything we're interested in. We would like to have every building with a voice.
Well, and just for the public's benefit too, discussion in this case is actually, that's a formal activity.
That's right.
EL 221.
Right, but I'm just saying, the
State law.
word discussion to some
17.
people just means sitting around the table and having a discussion. In this case, that's an actual formal
That's right.
process, procedure. Because the communication committee, I know, has talked a lot about how can we impact internal communication. And that was a question that they also brought up, was understanding that has to take place in a formal way, making sure it gets out to all
It was conceived back
the...
in the early 70s with the collective bargaining law, 217, as Linda just referenced. And we meet twice a month, sometimes more often. All last spring and through the summer, we
Okay.
met every single week. And it's, we are not allowed to choose the teachers who are at the table.
Right.
That's not our job. And so we rely on them to bring that team together. And it's an effective conversation time, but it's only as effective as the scope of the representation.
And, yeah, getting it back to all of the people would be important. So thank
Well,
you for that.
I think it's important to know also that this conversation took place in a professional development opportunity, I guess I might say, with Dr. Mohammed.
Right.
When he was here, and we were talking about how we can change our culture and better communicate, and I believe this idea was generated during that time.
It was.
So it was, teachers were there and administrators and...
Well, and the danger of not having a healthy communications process is that alternative forms of communication
Right.
will develop.
Right.
A lot of that being gossip and just dangerous.
Well, or the conversation becomes only partially factual because
That's right.
there isn't someone who knows what actually took place. And so
It's all in our best interest to have
very
healthy.
absolutely for everyone.
Mhm.
So.
Okay. So is there anything with superintendent reports or board reports? Anybody have anything?
Celebrations.
Celebrations?
Celebrations.
Absolutely. Okay.
I will take this as a celebration and just mention the name of former board member Charlie Hilton, who passed away last week. And, you know, his loss is going to be greatly, it's going to be present in the community, the loss, if I can put it that way. And for those who may not know him, Charlie was a former administrator here at Richmond Community Schools, also served on the Board of Trustees. And I had the pleasure of both serving as an athlete here under him and serving as a board member with him here. And he's affected, and he had a positive effect on so many lives over the last 60-plus years while he was in this area, that it went beyond those who were just student athletes. It went beyond those who he affected with his votes here at this table, but through his continuous participation in not only RCS but other things that he was involved with in Richmond community, his loss will be one of those that will be hard to fill in this community, so someone will have to step up to the plate. But I would like to celebrate his life and also his commitment to education.
Absolutely. Suzanne?
I would like to celebrate the staff at Richmond High School and also Elizabeth Starr Academy. The football game at homecoming became not homecoming. It was homecoming.
Yeah.
It became a complicated and difficult time. There was a medical emergency, there was a weather situation, and I just have to say, I watched that unfold, and not that I would expect anyone to do any less than exactly what they were supposed to do, but there were so many opportunities for something to go wrong. And I was so impressed and proud of everyone. Everyone was where they're supposed to be, did exactly what needed to happen. There were little kids from Elizabeth Starr there, and the weather broke, and they just all did phenomenal. I stood there and just was in awe of them. So I want to say, good job.
Thanks. Good.
And I would just like to say that Dennis' staff is so proud. The ones I've talked to, I haven't talked to every single person, but they're just beaming right now. And I think we're all very, very proud of their accomplishments. And they're certainly, they're just so happy. And it was a wonderful thing that they accomplished.
Well, I think we have to talk about the homecoming activities and the parade.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
It was
A win.
and
The win that took 2 days.
exactly.
And over what school was it again, Dr. Borov? I don't remember what school
Well,
we beat.
let me tell you, I was accosted at the ISD.
Alicia Stewart's sister-in-law.
I am not responsible for her behavior.
Their board members said Richmond will stop at nothing to win a game. I said, you've got it.
Well, anyway, the students and the sponsors, Corey Irwin and Chris Lopresti, and all the students that organized the events for the parade and homecoming should be congratulated.
Activities after the parade were
Homecoming
great
courts.
and very
Yes.
well at the
We had the
homecoming.
Queen here tonight, didn't we?
We
Yes,
did. We
Oh,
did.
we should have.
And I have heard from a number of people that they consider this one of the better parades that has
Probably the largest one I've
come
seen.
about in a long time.
Somebody said they thought there were less people there, and someone else said it was because everyone was in the parade.
And I will say, the football team on Saturday, that drive, I was down on the field, that was pretty impressive, and I was so excited the whole way. I'm going, oh, keep going, keep going. So everyone did great.
It was done without the interference of
Uh-oh, don't say it.
bad referees.
Don't end on a bad note.
Substitute refs.
Don't end
Well,
on
we
a bad
have
note.
we have Miss Ingram at the state,
Yes, Aaron's
golf tournament.
state golf.
so we've done pretty well.
Anything else for the good of the cause? Meeting adjourned.